How to read the motif charts in The Kidnapper by Nitwit Monica. When you encounter a motif chart or any kind of chart, it actually is an easier way, or a lot of us find it an easier way to knit than reading written out directions. So in my pattern on The Kidnapper, you will find instructions for the first heart motif on that pattern, which I'll show you how to do. And then it's just a matter of carrying the knowledge from this over to the teddy bear motif heart, or the teddy bear motif. So once you know how to do this, the teddy bear will be just as easy. So what do? Well, in the pattern, it tells you to do the ridge rib stitch for so many stitches, and then you place a marker, PM, place a marker. So this is just a tiny little swatch I have. So I'm going to pretend that the pattern says to do the ridge rib stitch for 5 stitches. So that's fine, and I'm on row 1 of a row 1. So so I will go knit, purl, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just pretending my pattern says to do the ridge rib for 5 stitches. Just do whatever it says, and then it'll say place marker. So you just put a marker on. Now what? Now is where you would start following the diagram to help you do the chart. So you've placed a marker, and now you would read your chart. And on charts, most charts, the odd numbers are the right side of the pattern, and it's read from right to left, and the odd numbers, the odd rows, are the wrong side of the pattern, and you read it going from left to right. And at the bottom here there are often numbers, and that's just indicating this column, that's you're at the 5th stitch. This column, you're at the 10th stitch. It's just to help you identify where you are. The heart motif on the pattern is 13 stitches and 14 rows. You will need your row counter, and we're starting on the row 1. So we did the ridged rib up to where it says place a marker, which I've done, and now we follow the chart. So in this chart, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colored parts, and that means you're going to do 5 in the ridged rib stitch. Okay, how do I do that? Well, it's easy. You just follow with what you're doing. So this is row 1, and I know I've done knit, purl, knit, so I know the next one is a purl, and I just follow my ridge rib pattern. So I do that for 5 stitches. So that's, and you can see where you are, because I can see that that is a knit. So I will just do the ridge rib pattern for 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Perfect. So we did that. Now it is telling me to do that, which means purl on the right side, knit on the wrong side. So we're going to purl that because we're on the right side. So we'll purl that. Then this one means to knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side. So I knit. The next one indicates to purl on the right side. I shall purl it. Then we do 5 more of the ridge rib. Now you want to make sure that you are doing it in the pattern of the blanket. You don't just want to start a new ridged rib going, okay, I'll just knit, purl, if it doesn't match up. So you do have to look at where you are on the blanket. And in this case, I can see clearly by looking that this, you can tell that that's a knit, and that's knit, that stitch, and you can tell that this one is a purl. So I would start with the purl, because if you do a knit, you're going to goof up your pattern, your ridged rib pattern, and you do have to follow, just follow and pay attention to what's going on in the blanket. So you can clearly see that this one would be a knit, so you know that would be a purl. So you're going to do 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the ridged rib. And in this case, we're starting with a purl. So that's what we do. Purl, knit, purl, knit, and purl makes it 5. Okay, and now you put your marker back, place your marker, and then it would say, if you're following the actual pattern, it would then tell you to continue on with your ridged rib to the to the next heart or to the end of the row or wherever you're at. So I'm just going to the end of the row with my normal ridged rib pattern. Right, and this is where, even as an experienced knitter, I will use a row counter because I will get mixed up. And I know I finished row 1, so that says row 1. Let's move on to row 2 to show you how to do it in reverse. Okay, now remember, you have to read from left to right this time and follow the instructions as to what it says. So now we know we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4 in the ridged rib pattern. Okay, and that is in between your stitch markers, not outside of them. That's in between. So I have to work in pattern along the edge of my work in pattern up until the stitch marker, and I know where I am because I can see very easily what's going on in the blanket. Okay, now we start. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 in ridged rib. Well, very clearly on a row 2 of a ridged rib, this would be a knit. So we're going to go knit, purl, knit, purl. That's 4. Perfect. Then it is telling me to purl on the right side and knit on the wrong side. Well, I'm on the wrong side, so I have to knit. Then I have 1, 2, 3 of that, which would be purl on the wrong side. So I do 3 purl. 1, 2, 3. 3 purl. Then I do 1 knit. This would be purl on the right side, but we're on the wrong side, so it's knit on the wrong side. So it's knit, and then we do 4 of the ridge. And just watch where you are in your ridge pattern. So I can see that I would do a purl. I can see I would do a purl next. So I'm going to do 4. Okay. So it's purl, knit, purl, knit. Move that little stitch marker over. Continue in your ridge rib pattern to the end of the row or till the next heart or wherever you are at. So I will just pretend I'm at the end of my blanket. Perfect. And that is row 2. Let's do row 3, just so you have a chance to really understand how this works. Okay, so I just work in pattern. Now I also have to look at what's going on in the blanket, and I know now, so ignoring the chart here, ignoring the motif, but just looking at what's going on the blanket, I know that I'm at that point where my ridge rib stitch now comprises of doing that garter stitch where you knit 2 rows of knit. So I know that's what the ridged rib is. It's actually just knitting. So I have to do that. I have to follow the pattern that's outside of the chart of the blanket to make sure. So, okay, so we're on a knit row of the ridged rib. And now we're on row 3. And it asked me to do 3 of the ridged rib. Well, and I know that we're doing a knit row. So it's 1, 2, 3 of the ridged rib, which is knit. Okay, so then the next stitch is purl. So we purl that one. Then the next stitch, then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 knit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 knit. Then we have to do 1 purl. 1 purl, And then we have to do 3 of the ridged rib, and we know that we're on the knit row of the ridged ribs, so those 3 are going to be knit. 1, 2, 3. Move it over because we're outside of the motif, and continue on in the ridged rib, which is, again, as we said, it's a knit row. Perfect, and that is row 3. Let's do row 4. Row 4, outside of the motif of the ridged rib, we know that this is the wrong side, so we know we have to knit row 4. We're at that point of the ridged rib, so we're just going to knit until we get to, there we go, the motif. Okay, so row 4, we're reading from left to right, so it wants 2 of the ridge, which in this row it is knit, 2 knit. Okay, then it wants that thing, which is a knit on the wrong side, which is what we are. We're on the wrong side, so we actually do another knit. Then we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that are purled on the wrong side. So we have to purl 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. Then after we finish the 7, then we have to knit. So we knit, and then we have to do 2 of the ridged rib stitch, which in this case happens to be 2 knit, because we're on the knit part of the ridged rib, and we knit out to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4. I happen to have 5 on the outside, just in my little example here. And we move the counter, the row counter, and we've done row 4. Okay, so we finished row 4. Now we're going to move into row 5. So let's get to the chart, and now the ridged rib stitch is in a 4-row repeat. Now we're on a row 5, which is like, what's that? Well, just think about your pattern. It is just done in repeats of 4, and you can tell you're on your right side now, and I can tell that I've done my 2 rows of knit, so I know I'm back to what is like the 1-by-1 ribbing. So I will do my 1-by-1 ribbing, which is knit, purl, etc. Knit, purl, knit, just matching up everything that is down below. Okay, now we switch the marker over, and we know we're on row 5, and that is doing a ridged rib stitch. So we are at the part where we're doing ribbing, and we can tell that that would be a purl stitch. This is the knit, this is the purl, so that would be 1 of a purl. Perfect. Then we have to do that guy, which is a purl. So we're doing another purl. Then we're going to knit for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're going to knit for 9 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Knitting for 9. Okay, then we do that guy, which is a purl on the right side. Ta-da, purl. And then we do a ridged rib. So look at where you are in your blanket, and we know we're doing the 1-by-1 ribbing right now, and you can tell that that falls in a purl. It's in the valley, so it's going to be a purl. That's where we're at in the ridged rib. Okay, slide the marker over and continue with your ridged rib to the end or the next motif, wherever you are, like that. And that is row 5. Let's do row 6. Row 6. Oh, okay, so let's get to the chart. So again, I'm on the back side of my ribbing, and I can tell by looking at it I am still doing the 1 by 1 ribbing, so I just follow what's there. And the 1 by 1 ribbing in this case, because it's the back side, starts with a purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, now we slide the marker over, and oh, now there's no more of the ridged ribbing that it's asking us to do. Now it's just asking us to knit on the wrong side. Okay, I knit on the wrong side. Then I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 purls. Purl on the wrong side. So I do 11 purls. Okay, easy enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then it wants me to knit on the wrong side, remembering how you're reading. Okay, knit. And then we continue with our ridged rib, and we know we're on a 1 by 1 row where we're knit purling. Okay, voila. And that is row 6. Row 7 of the heart chart. Just got to loosen up this yarn here. So again, outside of the motif, I have to keep track of what's going on, and looking at it, I can tell that I'm now at the row where I would do the garter stitch. In other words, I'm going to knit 2 rows back to back. I can tell I'm at that point. So for outside of the chart, I now know that I am on my ridged rib comprises of just knitting across. Okay, now we're at the chart of row 7, which is entirely knit. That's not difficult, so we just knit right across through the chart. Like that. I think you can see some of the heart forming now, finally, on the pattern. Around this row it starts to get fun because you can actually see it. Hey, look, I am actually making something. Place the marker over and then continue in your ridged rib, which, as we know, in this case, it is just knitting right across. Okay, and change your marker. So that's row 7 done. Flipping over, and you can tell you're on the right side too, because we've got the nice stockinette stitch appearing on this side, which comprises of the knits, and on this side the heart is in the purls. So that's how it gets a little easier to see what side of the blanket you are on. Okay, so now we're on row 8, so we have to get, which is a wrong side. So again, on the ridged rib outside of the motif, just look at where you're at, and this, because we did 1 row of knit, we know the back side has to be the 2nd row of knit. So we just do that. It isn't difficult, it just requires thinking, that's all. Okay, transfer it over, and row 8 is the same right across, and it's the wrong side, because anything reading this way is the wrong side, which is purl on the wrong side. So we purl right across. Whoops. Place the marker over, and then we are now outside of the motif, thinking again about what's going on in the rest of the blanket. And on this case, we have to finish with that second row of knitting in order to make that ridged, those ridged rows, which is garter stitch, which is knit 2 rows back to back. Okay, so that is row 8. Ta-da! Getting there. Row 9. Look at that. Row 9 is the same as row 7. Exactly the same. So, except for you have to keep in mind of what's going on outside of the motif. So we know now outside of the motif we've done our 2 rows of garter stitch, or knit 2 rows. So we're back to the 1 by 1 ribbing on this row. So outside of the motif we are now doing knit purls until we hit the motif. Okay, and on row 9 the motif is just right across knit. So that's what we do. Okay, got some yarn troubles here. Okay, and so we knit right across and move that marker. Now we're outside and back to the regular blanket in the ridged rib, and we now have to continue with 1 by 1 ribbing. Again, looking at where you are at, and I know that I am, you can tell that that's a line of knit stitches here, so this would be knit, purl, knit, purl, and knit. And that is how quickly row 9 went. Okay, row 10, outside of the ribbing, or outside of the motif, I'm doing the 1 by 1 ribbing still. And I know I am, because on the wrong side I can still see purl knits, purl knits, purl knits, and I have to continue with that on the wrong side. So purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, switch it over. This is row, if you forget where you're at, oh yeah, I finished row 9, this is row 10, boom, right across, purl. So we do that. We purl right across. Slide it over. We're outside of the motif, and we have to continue with the 1 by 1 ribbing, and so that would be a purl. Just look at where you're at on the blanket outside of your motifs, and you can clearly see where the knit lines are and the purl lines. So that is a purl. And that is row 10. This is an old counter. The numbers are starting to wear out. Okay, row 11. Okay, so first thing we have to do is remember where we're at in terms of the ridged rib stitch, and I can tell that it's time for me to start the 2 rows of garter stitch, knitting 2 rows. So that's what we're doing on this. It is entirely a knit row outside. Okay, and row 11 is knit right across. Not hard. Okay, move the stitch marker and remember where you are in pattern outside of the chart, and I am doing knit right across. I'm doing my 2 rows of garter stitch. Okay, and that is row 11. Row 12. This is getting, you're just about finished. We're getting there. Row 12. So first outside of the chart, we're on the wrong side, and you can tell we need to finish off the garter stitch. We need to knit those. So that's where we are in the ridged rib, is we're just knitting. So we knit those right across that whole row when you're doing the ridged rib. Okay, now we're into the chart, and row 12, aha, is throwing some good stuff at us again. So now we have to knit on the wrong side. So we knit 1. Then we have to purl 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Purl 5. Okay, I will do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have to knit 1 on the wrong side. This is where the heart splits in half. And then we 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 purls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the last one is a knit. Remember, we're on the wrong side, is a knit. Beauty. Pass that over, and remembering where you are in outside of the chart, and we are, you see a bunch of purls here, which tells me that you've done garter stitch and we're on the wrong side, so we have to finish that. It means we have to knit right across. That's how we started this row, by knitting right across. That's how we have to finish it. Okay, that is row 12. Row 13. Getting back into some of the ridged rib stitches inside the motif. But first we got to get there. Okay, so now I look where I am, and I know I just finished my 2 rows of garter, so I'm back to the 1 by 1 ribbing. I'm on the right side, so I will start with my knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. Okay, and now I do 1 ridged stitch. So where are we in the ridged? Well, it's hard to tell underneath. I can tell that it's going to be a purl just by looking at what's going on outside of it, but if you forget or you have trouble, just look at what you just did. I just did purl, knit, so I know the one more, right? Purl, knit, it'll be purl. So I purl that one. Then I have to purl that one. Okay, I shall purl that one like that. Then we have to do 1, 2, 3 knits. 1, 2, 3 knits. Then we have to do 1, 2, 3 purls. 1, 2, 3 purls. Then we have to do 1, 2, 3 knits. 1, 2, 3 knits. Then we have to do a purl. Then we have to do a ridged rib. Okay, so where am I in the ridged rib? Well, because we're on the knit, purl side, right? The 1 by 1 ribbing. So where am I? I'm not entirely sure. So you stop and look outside of the motif. So I look, and I can clearly see that that is a line of knits. So if this is knits, that's purl. So that would be purl, knit, purl. So I would purl that one. That's the stitch that goes there. And then I continue outside of the motif into my 1 by 1 ribbing. Nice. And that is row 13. One more row to go, guys. Row 14, wrong side. So I know I'm on the wrong side of my work and outside of the motif, wrong side. I know because I see ribbing happening here, I know I have to continue with the ribbing on the wrong side. So this is a purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, now we're moving to in the motif. So now we need 2 of the ridged rib. Okay, where are we? Well, we just did purl, knit, purl. So purl, so it'd be knit, purl. So knit, purl are the 2 of the rib. Okay. Then we have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of the knit on the wrong side. Okay, count that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. And 2 of the ridged rib. Okay, so where are we in terms of the ridged rib? Look outside of the work, outside of the chart. So we know that this is a 1x1 ribbing, and I can see that there's purl, there's knit, there's purl. So this would be knit, purl. So this is a purl. So that's a purl, and there's a knit. Okay, and then we continue outside of the chart like that. Nice. And that is row 14. And that is your chart. Now to just finish this, because you can see the heart, but let me do 2 more rows outside. I'm finished the motif, so now I just do the blanket ridged rib, which again, looking at where I am, I can see that now it's 2 rows of knitting, like 2 rows of garter stitch. So I will just quickly do that just so you can see how pretty it looks. And I don't need the stitch markers in here anymore, so I'm going to remove them because we are done the motif. And now I just keep working the ridged rib pattern, which in this case is knitting all the way across. We have to do 2 rows of knitting. So let's just get that. 2 rows of knitting, zipping along here. Get rid of that one, don't need it. As we are done the chart, yay! It's always nice to be done. Perfect. And I don't need to really knit that last one. It doesn't matter because you would just be continuing in pattern. But now you can see this chart has now translated itself into your knitting, and you can see the lovely little heart that is knit, and it is reversible. I like the stockinette side a little bit better, but as you knit this out, you will see the image of the heart in the purl side of the work. And there it is. So you have completed the heart motif. Not too difficult.